Hi, good morning once again. My name is Idris from Interface Africa. At Interface, what we do is we connect underserved communities to markets and opportunities they otherwise couldn't reach. So that's the angle we're looking at this conversation from, the commercial viability of this infrastructure being connected and also the best way to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. That's actually an excellent place to begin with because we have spent years talking about connecting people to the internet. The next challenge is connecting institutions to each other. Today, many of our conversations around digital transformation still focuses on expanding, broadband, increasing smartphone access, or getting more people online. Those are important foundation, but connectivity alone doesn't create a digital economy. The real transformation begins when our system begin talking to one another. Today, a Nigerian citizen can still provide the same information multiple times to different agencies. To register a business, verify your identity, apply for a permit, access healthcare, or even pay taxes. And every institution asks for information you've already submitted somewhere else. That isn't a connectivity problem, it's an interoperability problem. Real digital integration isn't achieved because every organization has its own software or digital platform. Is achieved when those platforms can actually securely exchange information, understand each other's data, and also work together without even placing those burden on citizens. So ultimately, I would say technology should become almost invisible. Digital systems are the ones people hardly notice because everything simply works. Imagine someone involved in a road accident now. A simple emergency call is made. The telecom operator identifies the caller's location within those seconds. Emergency responders receive the same exact coordinates immediately. Traffic management system also, recommend the fastest available routes. But if the incident affects traffic, or a public safety, the relevant agencies receive the same information simultaneously instead of through separate phone calls. The citizen doesn't have to explain, the situation 5 different times. But from the citizen perspective, it feels like interacting with one government, one service, and also one integration response. Technically, we already understand that many of these ingredients required. We need interoperable APIs that allow, different platforms to connect securely. We need common data standard so that information collected by one institution can be interpreted correctly by another. We need trusted digital identity system that enables citizens to, verify themselves once instead of, repeatedly submitting the same document. As a young founder myself, you know, when I go online applying for something, I just like the idea for me to just say, okay, automatically fill this information because I filled it multiple times. So we need cloud infrastructure that allows system to scale differently. Cybersecurity frameworks actually also protect our sensitive information. And then also the strong data governance that clearly defines who can access our data, under what circumstances, and with what accountability. So increasingly, we also need responsible artificial intelligence that can support decision making without compromising transparency, fairness, or privacy. So here's what I've learned from working across technology and development. Technology is really the biggest obstacle. People are. Because many institutions still build digital platform in isolation. Different ministries procure different systems. Private companies develop solutions using different standards. The data is treated as something to protect rather than something to responsibly share. Everyone is digitalizing, but not everyone is coordinating. The result is that we don't eliminate silos, we digitalize them. And digital silos are still silos. This is why I believe the biggest requirement for integration is not another software platform. It is governance. It is the trust we put in those platforms, and it's also the leadership. Technology can connect databases overnight, but leadership connects institutions. And citizens don't experience government ministry by ministry. They don't care which database holds their information or which agency owns which platform. They simply expect services that are reliable, secure, efficient, and seamless. Because when our system communicates, our institution actually collaborates and our policies can align. Digital transformation stops being a technology project, and it becomes a public service that improves life. And I believe that that's what building Nigeria's digital backbone is ultimately about, not just connecting, networks, but connecting the people, the institutions, and also the opportunity in a way that leaves no one behind. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
All right. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for having me as well. Like you said, I've worked in both sides of the table, as working at private sector and also at the government. And I've come to believe the question before us today is not simply who builds, but how we build together. This is how or where public-private partnership framework becomes not just policy, but a structural necessity. So before I build on to your question, as we all know, Nigeria's digital transformation targets are quite ambitious. For example, the target of 3 million technical talents by 2027, which there's a progress for example, now NIMSS has over 110 million Nigerians registered, enrolled in their system, but millions are still having lack of access. These are measurable high stakes, but here's what I've learned from sitting in both sides of the table. Integration is not the same as coordination. Two tracks running in parallel with group branding is still two tracks. True integration means shared risks, shared accountability, and shared outcomes. So what gives me hope is the work that the DG at NITSS is championing. For example, having a dedicated PPP unit. This is not like a bureaucratic formality. It's a recognition that digital infrastructure cannot be built by government alone and should not be left to the private sector alone. So the PPP unit serves as the institutional bridge, ensuring that when government says partnership, it means co-creation, not outsourcing. The DG himself has also reiterated this. So I've worked in various initiatives, for example, the National Sovereign Cloud program and the Youth Comfort platform, which I contributed to. What I've seen hand in hand is working with ecosystem partners. So when I'm asked this question, the challenge is that is genuine integration when the PPP is empowered to do its work. The challenge is that the practice is still being institutionalized across the system. The difference between partnership as a default and partnership as exception is not structural, it is cultural. And culture is built through consistent practice, not just policy alone. So this is some of the work that NITSS has been doing in making sure that it's been a cultural type of thing, not being implemented gradually. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's very true. From what Ms. Fatima mentioned and also Dr. Abu Bakr, it's something that I've witnessed firsthand, and I believe that's the best approach towards achieving the common aim, which is the inclusion and angle of things. So as for the infrastructure creation, yes, Dr. rightly mentioned, and I believe NIDA itself is on the right track with that. It's not a mission to outsource, but to collaborate with industry players to see how best we can deliver. And by delivery, I mean what comes out of it, the outcome of it. Is it just simply about getting more people digitally included? Is it more about reach of people to get access to that infrastructure, or is it tied to actual economic output and income to the people that get access to it? As you know, our biggest problem as a nation stems out of low productivity, and low productivity equals low outcome. And then that's when people start to, go for alternatives, and that results into other things like banditry and insecurity in general, and things around that. So yeah, I believe one of the biggest misconception is tying it to just the digital infrastructure without having the end goal in sight. So a digital infrastructure only connects creates value when it connects people to actual opportunities it unlocks. As a player in this space, it is something I've witnessed firsthand. So we are in a space defining company, whereby we try to say what we are trying to do is we try to unlock opportunities that have been overlooked for some time. We started in the solar space, whereby we said, okay, how do we create access to otherwise underserved markets and unlock opportunities for people? And then we realized that most importantly, it's a digital infrastructure problem. you know um Number one, we don't have data on the markets that need solar the most, which is highway. But people will not use that highway if they are not.
Technical depth, the government and the private sector are better positioned to deliver together. This is why, from the example I've seen with NIDA, we have wisely embraced partnership as a strategic approach. Second, partnership is not necessarily the easier part, but it is the smarter part. A statistic that stays with me is through IT project clearance and enterprise content management initiatives, NIDA has helped the federal government save over 319 billion naira by eliminating duplication and ensuring coordinated spending. This is not about convenience. This is fiscal responsibility and strategic coherence. So in commitment to partnership, it has formally embedded in its pillar 7 of the SRAP, which is forge strategic partnerships and collaboration. This is partnership as a deliberate, measurable strategy. But my observation as partnership becomes the default, there's value in ensuring that every partnership is purposeful. Not every project needs a private partner. Not every private partner brings public value. So this is what I feel like the government has also required every agency and MDA to kind of have that unit to discriminate wisely, to know when partnership is necessary and where government should build capacity internally. This is exactly the work we are advancing at NITSS. Thank you.
All right, thank you once again. So as Dr. Abakar rightly mentioned, this is what makes the partnership work, that handshake, and everyone having that clear understanding of what they are bringing to the table and what makes it work. You know, as for the private sector, what we need is what the government provides, and what the government provides is what we need. So you can see it's a symbiotic relationship which works. So if the government can reduce uncertainty for us, and the things become way more certain by giving us more stable policy, which I believe NIDA is doing amazingly well in, and also very clear regulation, so we can have a clear playing field where everyone understands the game at stake, and also um how connected, or that how harmonized the system is, so that there is always that handshake between all these different regulators, all these different service providers in and outside government, that you can have one single source of identity, one clear regulation that governs the way you do things, one measure touch points for all your interaction. It then becomes one layer to work with, and it becomes way easier for you to grow and scale as a company. Then of course the ministry as a whole, the great work the ministry is doing around having one trusted digital identity, which serves as the basic infrastructure layer. Every service provider, be it in connectivity or power or access or finance, um, which enables us to actually know who we are serving, to serve them better, and also deliver more equitable services to them. And then open standards, very very important. Having that open standard mindset or regulation that enables us to plug and play where necessary. So given all that, and the government having that in place, us bringing our own commercial infrastructure. And that's why I try to, as much as possible, differentiate between, the role of the government in providing the governance infrastructure, the regulation, the open policy, and standardization that enables us to have a level playing field, and then us focusing more on the commercial viability aspect of these markets, and then riding on this government highway being created to deliver these products and services um, as a private player. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Zena, for that question. Who is actually accountable when something fails? I think this might be one of the most important questions of the entire discussion. And I actually want to sit with it for a moment because I don't think we ask it enough. Here's the truth. Digital system rarely fail because this technology stops working. Technology never stops working. They fail because responsibility becomes invisible. So let me ask one question. When was the last time a system failed in this country and someone actually stood up and said, that one is on me? Think about what actually happens. An online government service crashes. Sensitive data gets exposed. A rural rollout stalls halfway and quietly dies. And what happens next? Citizens are left, playing detective. Was it the telecom provider, the cloud vendor, the software company, the government agency? Why should an ordinary citizen have to investigate who failed them? They didn't sign up, to be an investigator. They just expected, the system to work. Because sometimes we just go online, download the app because we think, okay, this is going to work for us, right? And that is, I feel like that's not too much to ask. So here's my answer. Plain accountability cannot be outsourced. Again, when implementation is shared, that's the part we get wrong again and again. We are comfortable sharing the credit when a project launches. Are we also equally comfortable sharing the blame when it breaks? Because you can't have one without the other. If five different organizations build a system together and it fails, it wasn't my part cannot be an acceptable answer to anyone. So, as a young innovator, here's what I believe every single partnership needs: non negotiable, owns what? Clearly on a paper, before the ribbon is cut, how is success actually measured? Not just a launch. Because a lot of us here come out and say we are innovators, we are startup founders. And when something breaks, how do citizens get real answers, not just a press release, an actual answer? Because let me ask you this: how many times have we seen a beautiful launch event? Cameras, ribbon, big speeches, and then radio silence the moment something goes wrong. Where did that energy all go wrong? Or if we can actually mobilize much visibility to announce a system, why can't we mobilize even a fraction of it to explain when the system fails? That's why I don't think the metric we obsess over how many projects were launched actually tells us anything meaningful. Launch is not the same as working. So here's what I think we should be asking instead: is it still functional 6 months later or a year later? Or did it quietly die after the press coverage ended? Our underserved communities, the rural farmer, the young woman somewhere actually benefiting from it? And honestly, do citizens even trust it enough to use it? Once trust breaks, ask yourself, how long does it take to build it? I'll say trust skills adoption. Because if technology scales system, then trust scales adoption. If people lose confidence in digital service, even the best infrastructure becomes underused. We have a lot of platforms that are very great, but then they're actually underused because people don't even know if this system is what they need to use. My concern isn't that Nigeria is building infrastructure too quickly. It is that we build accountability as intentionally as we are building technology. I hope this answers your question.
Perfect. Thank you, Fatima, for mentioning something around shared responsibility. And I also think we can balance it with actual individual responsibility because building digital infrastructure um, is not like building physical infrastructure is it's not as easy to trace as building a digital one. There are always audit trails towards contribution, so you can always have a look and see where the problem stemmed out of, and then you address it. Is it the infrastructure? Is it the identification system? Is it the payment system? Is it like whatever? Is it the connectivity? Like whatever the problem is, I feel like there is that level of transparency with building digital uh, infrastructure that provides that enough evidence to show what went wrong, how best to address it, and who is responsible for that piece of the puzzle. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alamin. Dr. Abakar?
I think both speakers said valid points. Fatima, coming from the citizen point of view, who should we blame when some of these issues happen? And Alamin also reiterating some of the points. So the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission Act 2005 as amended, and the National Policy on PPP provide the legal scaffolding. However, also the FEC approved national policy on PPP to establish a clear framework. But here's what I've observed, really. We are actually building infrastructure faster than we are building accountability to govern it. So some of these issues led to the importance of having PPP units in different agencies. So what I've seen at NITSS in attempting to address this by accountability issue is having partnership agreements from day one, not as an afterthought. So this include having things like performance-based contracts with SLAs, independent monitoring and evaluation clauses, and exit strategies that protect public interest if partnership fail. So I had the privilege of contributing to one of these initiatives that gives me hope, which is like the co-creation of the digital transformation dashboard to track SRAP 2.0 implementation. We developed this in partnership with GIZ. So this dashboard is like designed to provide real-time visibility into the progress of our SRAP pillar. So we are showing the citizens, the public, everything. So this is making accountability not just a promise, but a visible, trackable reality. So where everybody has access to know what is going on from the start to the finish of every project, and every citizen deserves this information, deserves to know what is happening, and deserves to know what is going on with his public, as we say, taxpayers and whatnot. So this work is still evolving in many states. Having accountability frameworks for digital infrastructure is still developing. The policies give the direction. The ongoing work between of having units in agencies and having partners to translate this policy into practice as well. So what I advocate for is that every digital infrastructure partnership must have published accountability metrics before a single naira is spent. The public has a right to know who is responsible, what are the penalties for failure, and how do we get our money back if promises are broken. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima, Alamin, and Abubakar. I believe everybody has taken away that yes, we are building systems and infrastructure faster than accountability to go with it, and systems are being put in place at the moment to ensure that we know who is to blame, what is to be done when things go wrong, and the likes. So, for the next question, let's bring this back to the people. Rural Nigeria has roughly 23% internet access compared to 57% in cities. A real physical exclusion gap. But exclusion in digital infrastructure isn't only about geography. We've heard this from the beginning of this conversation up until this point. It's also about who gets included once access exists, which is why Earth's own youth programs require that 40% of our participants be women, because inclusion doesn't happen on its own, whether the barrier is geography or gender. Fatima, we've all established this. You've worked directly at the intersection of tech and inclusion. When you look at how Nigeria builds digital infrastructure, is leaving out rural communities and women a mistake nobody meant to make, or is it something nobody actually planned or budgeted for? meaning nobody really planned or budgeted for the inclusion of women and rural communities.
Thank you, Zena, for that question. I feel like now this is when I could actually talk. I love this question because it challenges one of our biggest assumptions about technology, which is it's neutral. That once you lay the cable, everyone automatically wins. But has it ever actually been true for anything? Technology is never neutral. Every decision about connectivity, let's talk about affordability, language, accessibility, design itself includes someone, and somewhere along the way quietly writes someone else out of the equation. So when we ask whether the exclusion of rural population and women is a design flow or default design, I would say it's plainly is default, not because anyone sits down and decides to exclude people, but because we keep building for whoever is easier to reach. Okay, when a founder is building, they would look at, okay, what brings the money? What can we do? And who is easier to reach? So let me ask you, if easiest to reach is who we design for by default, who exactly are we calling everyone? Follow the logic. Infrastructure follows investment. Investment actually follows commercial demand. Demand follows population density and also the purchasing power. So companies build where the returns are highest. Fine, that's a spreadsheet decision. But here's my question: what happens to everyone who never shows up on that spreadsheet? Let's talk about rural communities, women, persons with disabilities, marginalized communities. They are not left out by accident. They are left out by arithmetic. If we hand this entirely to market forces, does digital inequality shrink or does it, compound year by year, deal after deal? As a young innovator myself, this isn't a theory for me. I've lived it. Watching it play out with young women in Northeast Nigeria, brilliant young women, curious, driven, ready to even become, a lot of things, work in data analysis, cybersecurity, AI to build their own tech enabled businesses. So, what do you think stopped them? Was it talent? Was it ambition? Was it intelligent? It was none of it. What stopped them was actually unreliable connectivity. Let's talk about that. No access to a laptop, power that cuts out mid lesson, no safe place to even sit down and learn. And often they never even knew the opportunity existed, which is the most important in the first place. Now, as someone building in this space, let me ask you honestly, how many brilliant young people are we losing right now simply because we never told them the door was open? Okay, let me give an example. Imagine going to a GSM village. I'm telling you, you meet 90% or 80% of them haven't gone to school. So tell me, had it been they knew this opportunity existed, I'm telling you, a lot of people would have been better. That question is exactly why I hold on to this principle. Talent is distributed equally. Opportunity is not. And let me say, every seat I sit on, I always say this. So if we keep measuring digital transformation in kilometers of fiber we laid or towers switch on, I have to ask you, build for whom exactly? Because access without ability is not inclusion. You can have internet and still lack the literacy to use it. Most of us own smartphones and still not afford the data to learn on it. You can have 5 bars of signal and still find nothing to build in your language, nothing built for a disability. So tell me, is that inclusion? Or is it also just infrastructure with a good press release? Real inclusion is also affordability and accessibility. Its relevance is confidence, trust, 5 things that will never appear on an infrastructure map. So why do we ask measuring only the map? This is where, as a young innovator, I push back hardest on treating inclusion as the final phase of a project, something we check for after the real work is already done. Because here's the question that actually matters. If you design the entire system first and only ask who did we leave out at the very end, was that a mistake or was it the plan all along? Because inclusion has to be the architecture. If you are building it, then build it from the start, not just decoration. That means budgeting for affordability, not just cables. Investing in digital literacy, not just the towers, building community tech hubs with real mentors in them, designing for low bandwidth network, which is very important with the network we have here in Nigeria, because not everyone is sitting on a fiber speed internet. Backing local language content, which is treating accessibility as a requirement from line one, not a favor we add later if the budget allows. Here's the question to every innovator in this room. I think you should be asking this. Who is actually sitting at the table when those systems get designed? Because if women, rural communities, young people, and persons with disability aren't in that room, they will never be co-creators of your solution. They will just be an aftermath to ask. So ask yourself, which system lasts longer? The one built for the people or the one built with them? Which brings me to this. Why do we keep celebrating kilometers of fiber and towers, erected when neither one tells you if a single life actually changed? This success is whether a young woman in a rural village gets the same shots as someone in the capital, whether a farmer builds a business with a phone instead of relocation, whether a student learns from home instead of being priced out of the city. So here's what I'll leave you with. Is technology in your country expanding opportunity, or is it just concentrating it further in the hands of people who already had it? Because for me, it comes down to this. If inclusion is something we plan after the system is built, it's already too late. The exclusion happened at the design table. But if we build inclusion in every decision from policy to funding to implementation, then digital transformation stops serving whoever was easiest to reach first and then starts serving everyone. And isn't that the entire point of calling it progress in the first place? Thank you, Zainab. I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Thank you so much, Fatima. I think this is also my favorite question on this panel. Just as she said, just the way when we're building software and stuff, it's very advisable to table security in the design phase. Just the way we table stuff like that, inclusion of women, disabled people, and rural communities should also be done at that phase, because trying to include it afterwards when everything has already been designed, everything has been rolled out, isn't really efficient in the long run for the minority. So but Dr. Abubakar and Alamin, what Fatima just said, are you actually seeing it in your own numbers, or meaning who is actually being reached right now? Not the numbers you guys have on paper, not the targets that are written in documents and the likes. Who is actually being reached right now? Do you agree with what Fatima just said? Dr. Abubakar, you can go first.
Sorry, can you come again with a question?
I said everything Fatima just said now about inclusion being an aftermath of the solution, that is the solutions that are being created, infrastructures that are being designed. Does that match with what you're seeing in your own numbers at NITSS? Not the targets you people aim for, but who is actually being reached right now?
Yeah, it's very important in the inclusion of women and people with disabilities and whatnot. A lot of our initiatives that are being carried out now put emphasis into the women. We have a lot of programs that are being carried out and going on now, and it's a women-centric focus on women, giving them the right skills. And I feel like this is the right step in the right direction. Like you said, I should not mention the targets that we have on papers, but they are all there in our SRAP, having the required number of Nigerian women being digitally literate in a certain amount of year and whatnot. So, well, most importantly, a lot of our initiatives, 40% are given to women. Yeah, thank you so much.
Alamin?
All right. Thank you, Zainab. And okay, I think this is bringing it home. Um, as for us as a company, that's what our entire thesis is built around. You know, so we felt like there are a lot of things going on in the world, emerging technologies that are great and we have been enjoying as 10% of the population. While in places like where we come from, most of our people are left behind. So, whenever a new technology is built, whenever a new service is rendered, whenever a new product is offered, people address the first 10%, and then the 90% of the market remains invisible, unaddressable, and unserviceable. So, interface is literally coming in as that interface between these products, these services, these offerings from all these different companies and development partners and government, and these people that are often the most overlooked, the most neglected. So this is not just an afterthought. This is not just an inclusivity principle we have as a company. This is the core design of what we offer. And what has enabled us to do this is having that data centricity around what we are doing. We believe that first, these markets are not unserviceable, and secondly, they are not unaddressable, and thirdly, they are reachable. But the only way we can prove that is by being data backed. So if we can tell you that this is megatary, for example, this is the number of volume of transaction that happens every day in that place, from the livestock sellers to the people that buy feed from them and they sell to the people that consume, how many mishai are there, how many misuya are there, how many like small mom and pop shops exist there, and then on the wider scale, what markets do they serve, what kind of trade unions do they belong to, what kind of cooperatives do they belong to, and all that. Then you have that holistic overview of their entire viability as a market and how best you can approach them and then work with them. So in essence, what we have been trying to do, and to some great extent say able to do as a company, is help in de-risking your decision making in addressing those problems. So be it in government or development or even in private sector, when you want to you, we aim to make it easier for you to have that inclusion as a core strategy, as a viable means to an end, not just as a social responsible thing to do. We aim to make it provable that you can address these people and also make good returns out of it. So I believe there's a huge potential in this, and that's what my life mission has been built around. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alamin. I love what you said regarding having inclusion as a core strategy and the means to an end rather than it being a social responsibility type of thing. So, but thank you as well to Dr. Abakar and to Fatima for your answers. Before we move on to the last and final question, I would encourage our participants or viewers, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat box. We would be attending to them after the final question. So, for this last question, I want everybody to think of the big picture here. Every decision made about who builds this infrastructure and who's responsible for it becomes the foundation everything else is built on. Project Earth sees 2026 as a narrow window, our moment to lock in government commitments and partnerships before political attention scatters with elections on the horizon in 2027. Whatever gets built or fails to get built in this window is what Nigeria might still be living with 4 to 5 years from now. So ahead during that time, 4 to 5 years from now, when we look back and we ask whether Nigeria has actually closed this digital gap, what will matter more? who built it, or how it was built. And if this idea we've been discussing today, government and private sector working together, doesn't actually hold up, what is the real cost for the Nigerians still waiting on the wrong side of that gap? This question is open to all three of you. We can start with Dr. Abakar.
Um, so this is quite important as well. Is 5 years from now, when we assess whether Nigeria has closed this digital gap, I believe what would have mattered most is not who built it, but how it was built. The current model of government and private sector working together through structure PP, if it doesn't hold, the honest cost is not just financial; it's a human. Is a human. It will affect us entirely. If this fails, it's cost it affects the rural farmer who still cannot access digital financial services, the young graduate trained through 3MTTT who finds no digital infrastructure to work on, the SME owner who cannot integrate into digital supply chains because accountability systems are broken. So, as a researcher and practitioner, my work has focused on digital transformation among youth-old SMEs. That work depends on infrastructure. And my conclusion is consistent. Technology without inclusive infrastructure is just privilege with better marketing. So the work we are doing has at NITSS is a down payment on a different future, on where partnership is not a slogan but a structure, where accountability is not an aspiration but a contract, and where digital backbone we build today, which is Nigeria's waiting in the other side of the gap. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. I think as Dr. Abakar says, I don't think the answer will hinge on who built it. I think it will hinge entirely on how it will be built. I want to start with the premises, buried inside this question, because I think it's the most important part. Project Earth frames, 2026 as a narrow window. Before the political attention shifts, before the donor focus moves to the next emergency, the next country, the next headline. I want everyone in this room to actually sit with that for a second. How many narrow windows has Nigeria actually closed? How many moments did we treat as permanent that turned out to be temporary? So let me answer this plainly. 5 years from now, I don't think Nigerians will remember which organization's name was on the press release. Can you name the specific vendor behind the electricity grid that powers your home right now? Probably not. And that tells you everything about what people actually retain. What they retain is not who built it, is whether it worked when they intended it to. They'll remember whether, a student in the same rural area got the access to education, whether a farmer got got the opportunity, or whether a young woman could still build a business without having to, relocate to a city or just to prove she can do it. That's the scoreboard that survived, which is exactly why we build what we build matters than who builds. Because who is temporary by design, let me say. And I'll say this with hope, not cynicism, because I've seen that deliberate how focus building can look like. Dr. Abubakar is from BigTech, which is one organization also in Borno State. It stood out for me specifically because it closed digital divide in one of the hardest places in this country to do, which is Meduguri, built around, connectivity, literacy, and even also the local tech opportunity in partnership with governments, global partners, and also the private sector all at once. That's the young agency. It won't be judged 5 years from now by the year it was founded or the ministry it reports to. I think it will be judged whether a girl in Meduguri actually got the same shot as a girl in Benue, Lagos. That's the how I'm talking about. Accountable, local, built to, outlast whatever currently holds the office. So consider this for a moment. If we let 2026 pass the way we have let other windows pass before, who exactly absorbs their costs. Not the institution in this room, and not this panel, which is us. It is absorbed entirely by the Nigerians who are already waiting on the far side of the gap, the ones with the least room to keep waiting. Which is why I don't think the real question is whether Nigeria has the capability to close the gap. We clearly do. Like agencies like BIDA approve, we know how to start. The real question is whether we have the discipline to keep building together after this particularly window. This particular moment of attention moves on to whoever comes next, because infrastructure was never meant to be measured in kilometers or how many infrastructures were built. It will be measured by whether the people on the side of that gap, the ones this window was supposed to reach, actually got it in time. So 5 years from now, when we return to a stage like this, want to grade ourselves, I hope the honest answer is that we didn't just build during the window. We built something that actually outlasted it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Alamin.
All right. At the point, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think I'll just reiterate what Fatima mentioned. What matters the most is not actually who built it, but actually like who it gets delivered to. You know, does the person that is most overlooked, most neglected, most underserved actually bridge that divide and get access to product that otherwise they couldn't have? That's the most important question. As you mentioned, it's a key point that hit me home. Like, how does a girl in Maiduguri or Damboa get access to quality education? You know, of course, they are the U lessons, they are the Mivas of this world. But without connectivity, without the infrastructure, without the digital literacy, how does she get access to that level of education? And with the advent of artificial intelligence, it further democratizes the learnings, how people learn and the access to the education. But without that level of connectivity, without that level of inclusion, they still get left behind. So um, insurance for 1,000 naira per month. It's as low as that, and we have solar company customers that are already paying us 10,000 per month. So these people want to pay 11,000 and get access to insurance. These people want to pay 11,000 naira and then the insurance covers everything. It's quite comprehensive when you look at it. From accident and emergency to maternity care to, you know, psychological assessment and counseling to even admission, and all that, and drug use. So for 1,000, which we don't really see as much. So, but for a customer that is already paying us 2,500 per week, he can pay 2,750 and just add 250 naira and get access to that. But without having that phone, without having that internet, without having that connectivity, it then becomes a problem for him to get access to these services. Likewise, our farmers, how do they get access to um how do they get access to quality input? How do they get access to information about weather, information about index insurance, information about all the things that matters to them around markets and all that, without that level of inclusion? So, what this means to me personally is, um, it doesn't matter. It just needs to be built. It doesn't matter who builds it. It doesn't matter who takes credit. It doesn't matter how it came to happening. All we need to do is come together, both as private, public, or development practitioners, and make sure this thing gets built. And then we make those inroads for the people that are most often the most neglected and most often the most underserved in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abubakar, Alamin, Fatima. Your takes and contributions have been very insightful and eye-opening. In the absence of any questions, I am going to pull together a number of things worth holding to from this conversation. The first thing is that Partnerships shouldn't sit entirely on one side. Digital infrastructure agreements shouldn't be left entirely to the government, but they shouldn't be left entirely to the private sector either. A dedicated public private partnership structure was raised as a real fix. Partnership, as the default, not the exception, has to be intentional and built, not assumed or outsourced to one side alone. Secondly, leadership and governance connect the dots. Systems only work together when institutions can actually collaborate, and that requires leadership, trust, and governance, not just better technology. Silos and weak coordination between institutions are often the real point of failure rather than lack of technical capacity. The goal of everything we're doing is predictability, not just infrastructure, because building the technology is the easier part. The real objective is to build systems people can trust and rely on consistently, which only comes from accountability being designed in, not assumed. The fourth takeaway, and maybe one of the most important, is that access is not the same as inclusion. Digital infrastructure only matters where it actually reaches people, women, persons with disabilities, and rural communities, not just where coverage exists on paper. High connection numbers does not mean much if the people who need to be reached aren't actually included. And also, inclusion has to be designed from the scratch and not patched in later. And answering the main question of this panel, which says, what matters more, who builds it or how it was built, it has been established that the most important aspect of everything is how it was built and the impact that the infrastructure or solutions put in place have made to the common Nigerian or the common individual. So moving on, I would like to drop a few things on how you can actually be part of NITSS and Project Earth as a whole. Oh, sorry, before we move on, a question just came in. It says, thank you to all the speakers. I am of the school of thought that accountability goes alongside trust. I think we addressed that, but I'll carry on. You cannot really have sustainable digital inclusion without both. But even with trust and accountability, I think there are still significant gaps: transparency, digital literacy, recourse, data control, accessibility, institutional enforcement, and meaningful economic inclusion. So the question for me is, how do we close those gaps? I believe the evolution of digital inclusion should be access, trust, accountability, agency. We started with, can I get connected? Then, can I trust the system? From there, we move to who is accountable when something goes wrong. But the next question should be, do I have the knowledge, control, choice, and ability to challenge the system? For me, the next frontier of inclusion is not just access, trust, or accountability, but agency is the next. After moving people from simply being connected and protected to having the knowledge, choice, control, and recourse to meaningfully participate in the digital ecosystem. And I think, Fatima, you spoke about leadership and trust. Do you have an answer to this question?
Okay, thank you, Zainab. And for that question, I'll say building on that, I'll say access and trust, then accountability all still leave people as passengers in the system. Agency is what makes them participants because trust just means we are willing to use it. Accountability just means you know who to blame when it fails. Neither one gives you power before it fails. Agency is four concrete things: knowledge of what the system does with you, control over your own data, real choice, not this system or nothing, A request that actually works, not just a complaint form into the void. So the question I'll leave the room with isn't, did we connect people? Is 5 years from now, can the people this was built for actually challenge it, shape it, or walk away from it if it fails them? Because I won't say the agencies are to blame. Even the people that are built for have to, be among shaping it, challenging it, or when it fails them, they won't come online and say, okay, this failed them. They'll just move on to the next platform. So if not, we still haven't, built inclusion. We have just built a well-known connected form of dependency. Thank you. I hope I'm able to answer your question.
I believe so. I hope that answers your question, Abdurrahman. Thank you very much. Okay, so before we let you go, a quick word on how you can actually be a part of NITSS and Project Earth as a whole. NITSS, the system we've shortly discussed today, already is in place to work with agencies like the Nigerian Police Force, NSCDC, and the Federal Road Safety Corps, and it's built to grow through government subscription contracts, state level emergency service agreements, and public private infrastructure funding. It's not a closed system, it is actually designed for more partners to be a part of. So here's how you can specifically get involved depending on where you sit. If you're with a government agency or ministry, we would love to talk about an MOU framework built around NITSS or whichever pillar aligns with your mandates. You can reach out to our partnerships team at earth earth at bigtechagency.com. If you are a corporate investor, we can share our full concept notes and strategic roadmap, everything you need for due diligence, including our risk matrix and funding model. If you represent a development partner or donor, we're open to a direct conversation about co-funding, whether it's at the program level or it's focused specifically on NITSS. And if you're simply a Nigerian citizen, youth, or community member joining us today, you don't need an institution behind you to get involved. You can register for the Career Connect Expo, you can adopt HPPS Tag 3 through our Green Initiative, or you can join our 1000 Voices campaign. Whatever seats you're sitting in right now, government, private sector, or simply someone who cares about where Nigeria is headed, there's a door open for you. We built it, now we're asking you to walk through it. To our speakers, Fatima, Alamin, and Dr. Abubakar, thank you for such a substantive conversation that didn't play safe. Thank you for giving us your opinions and opening our eyes to a lot of perspectives. And to everybody that joined us today, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your attention and thank you for your questions. Within 24 hours of after this webinar, if you have any more questions, you can send them to earth at bigtechagency.com with session 2.0 follow up in the subject line. We'll get back to you within 48 hours. You can also follow us on our social media handles at BigTech Agency and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the upcoming sessions because we host these webinars every month, particularly the end of every month. To our speakers, we would be sharing a feedback form with you, which we would really appreciate if you fill in so we can work towards doing better for the next session. Fundamentally, this is an offer to be a part of a national development program that is grounded in evidence, managed with discipline, and designed to serve 5 million Nigerians over the next 3 years. Whether you're a government agency, an investor, a development partner, or a citizen who believes Nigeria can be different, the door is open. I'll leave you all with the words that guide everything we do here. We are not building for today. We are building what today should have had. That is Project Earth. Thank you so much for joining us today and see you all next time.